Welcome to today's virtual career exploration video. I'm Danielle Britton, Talent and Education Director at the Greater Binghamton Chamber of Commerce and the Greater Binghamton Education Outreach Program. I'm joined today by Larry Dake, who is the Assistant Superintendent for Personnel and Secondary Education at Union-Endicott Central School District. Thanks for joining us today, Larry.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I'm going to just jump right in, have you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career path.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm in my 16th year in education overall. This is my 10th year finishing up as an administrator. So I taught for 6 years in Vestal, and I was an administrator in Vestal for 3. And then I came to Union-Endicott in 2013 and was an elementary school principal. And now I'm in my 4th year here in our district office. I'm originally from the middle of Delaware County, a pretty small little town up near Oneonta. I had a great experience there. The kind of town where sort of everyone knows everyone. It has a very close-knit feel. You have the same classmates and friends from kindergarten through grade 12. So really was able to develop some really strong personal relationships. And I think that has helped me in college and graduate school and education, particularly in this kind of field where you're working with people and you're in their lives and you're trying to help them. And, the ability to build those close relationships is very valuable in terms of helping the community grow and helping our students grow.
Awesome. What made you interested in becoming a teacher and then school administrator?
Sure. Yeah. So my father was a teacher. My father was actually my high school English teacher, which if you haven't tried it, I would highly recommend it. And again, it's a really small town, so everyone had the same English teacher. And, I was always drawn to that in that perspective. I originally I've always loved American history. And so going through college, I was a history major, and I went to Binghamton University and was in their PhD program for history. And so I've always been drawn to kind of the research and the writing of that. And when I got into that program, I sort of quickly realized that there's a difference between really liking something as a hobby, majoring in it in college, and then having it actually be your life for the rest of your life. And, I sort of surveyed the scene, and there were folks there that were, in their mid-30s, and they hadn't finished yet, and they were brilliant people, and that's what they wanted. But I just thought to myself, like, man, I want to get out and work and have a job and start, doing some of that kind of stuff. And so I stayed in that program. I finished up the master's, but I also transitioned to the teaching program at Binghamton University. And I really have to sort of pause there and say, having Binghamton University here in our backyard has been a tremendous value to me and my career, whether it's meeting my wife there, their education program. I teach in it now, but I went through it on several levels. And so finishing up there with the teaching program, really getting some experience subbing in a lot of our schools, and then landing at Vestal, which was a tremendous school. And, early in my teaching career, I was very fortunate to have some mentors that sort of pushed me into different committees and different leadership roles, and really encouraged me to pursue administration. And so I started that program, and I was lucky enough to, start my administrative career about 10 years ago, and it's led to this.
Awesome. What does a typical day pre-COVID-19 look like for you?
Yeah. So, in these kinds of positions, there typically aren't, standard working hours. It's typically not 8 to 3. There's lots of responsibilities outside of those typical hours. So for me, I'm someone who's up very early. What I learned when I was finishing my doctorate with 2 young kids and a third one on the way, had to find time in the day that wasn't taking away from my family, but that I could capture to get some work done. And so the early morning hours kind of became that time. So I like to be up before everyone else in the house, and whether that's cleaning up emails or working on a couple small projects at home that I can do from my dining room table. I'm typically into the office between 7:30 or so. I was in a little earlier when I was a principal, but our district office kind of ramps up around 8. And then the day looks very different depending on what's going on. If I'm evaluating teachers formally in the classroom, I'm, in the high school, in our middle school, in multiple buildings. We have 7 buildings in the district. And so typically talking with those principals every day about some issue. I also oversee our human resources. So, we're in the spring right now. The summer tends to be our major hiring season. So, working with my team of 4 or 5 people on all the legalities and the civil service regulations and all those kinds of things. And then I try to get to as much as I can in the school community. One of my roles is overseeing the music department, so I try to get to as many of our concerts and musicals and support those teachers and students as I can. Oftentimes different organizations have meetings after school or dinners or benefits. There's sporting events. So, I try to make it a point to get to as much as I can to be visible while still balancing having young kids at home. What's nice is my kids are of an age where they can often come to a basketball game with me, or they can come to a concert. They enjoy basketball, they enjoy sports and music. So that's been helpful. So trying to find ways to again, not take as much time from my family, but also recognize that when you move into certain positions, part of the trade-off is that there are expectations for those things. So it's never perfect. I think I'm always trying to tweak how that looks, but it's worked pretty well so far.
Great. Obviously, schools have changed a lot since the whole COVID-19 outbreak.
Yeah.
So how has your workday kind of changed in relation to that?
Yeah, it's changed pretty substantially. So I remember on March 14th, which was a Saturday, at 2:00, we were in our boardroom as an administrative team, and that's about 2 hours before the county executive had closed the schools through April 13th or whatever it originally was. Tioga County had one case. Broome County didn't have any. I remember sort of, thinking back on it, being incredibly naive and thinking like, yeah, this will pass. We've never really experienced this kind of thing before. So, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we'll keep the lights on, we'll pay the bills, and we'll get back in mid-April. And, that was before really this ramped up substantially, particularly in New York State and in New York City. And you saw lots of different things happen. So, thinking back on that, even though it's about a month ago, it feels like about a lifetime ago. So really our focus has shifted in some ways. But initially in, say, mid-March to early April, we were really focused on food for our families. We're very fortunate to work with BOCES and their food service program. All 15 districts in our region share that service. So there's a lot of regional cooperation about sites, and a lot of that's been out on the media and on TV about where folks can go and pick up food. We've also had some local organizations such as our Endicott Rotary donate about $1,000 a week of groceries that we'll go and we'll pick up, and then we'll box up on Fridays, and some of our bus drivers come in and they actually deliver it to about 60 families. So we're starting to see that also now become hygiene products. Maybe not a traditional role of school, but in terms of supporting the community, that's been one of our major focus areas. The other focus has really been on connections. We made the decision early on that we're going to get a Chromebook or a laptop in every student's hands to support them during these times. So we spent a lot of time tracking students down, delivering Chromebooks, connecting with families, having them come to our office and pick them up. So that's been pretty time consuming too. And then a lot of meetings like this have taken place. I think we've all become very fluent Zoomers in some ways, and it's become part of our lexicon now. It's sort of like saying, I'm going to Google something, I'm going to Zoom today as a verb. And so, there's parts of just our daily routines that have changed as well. Also still connecting with those principals, talking with a lot of teachers and a lot of staff. We still are paying our staff. At this point, we just feel like that's the responsible thing to do at a time when folks really, really need that. And so, again, the shift is that we're still waiting on that other shoe to drop. States around us are canceling for the rest of the year. And I think if that were to happen, we'd really have to focus on another layer of questions, such as what does graduation look like? Obviously there wouldn't be spring sports. What do we do with some of that stuff? So, every couple of weeks brings a different layer of questions, and we're kind of working through those.
Yeah, absolutely. What sort of courses can students take while they're in school to think about education as a career path? Obviously, it's a field you have to go to college for and get higher level degrees. But when they're in high school, are there certain things or clubs they can get involved with to explore it as a career?
Yeah, I think the two biggest things with teaching as a career, and then certainly if someone has an aspiration to be a building principal, or move into a leadership position, being comfortable speaking in front of others is very important. Oftentimes without the ability to prepare. I know when I was a building principal, it happens a little less now, but as a building principal, you never knew who was on that phone or who was walking into the office. And you really sort of had to be ready to handle any manner of situation in a very positive way, in a way that would help build a relationship. You know, even it's de-escalating folks that are very angry with you for a decision that you had to make, and helping them to understand, and really trying to build that bridge for that family. So any type of situation where someone has to speak in front of others, whether it's like a mock trial, immediately comes to mind. I know when I was in high school, we had a Model United Nations Club. That was Model UN Club, which was I was a part of, and that was a great learning experience for me in terms of getting up in front of people, just to deal with kind of the nerves that go with that, but also deal with, you know, how do you talk to a room full of people and get your points across, and, you know, use your voice and use your body language and all those kinds of things. So I'd say that's probably first and foremost. But I think equally as important, if not more so, are any situations where you have to work with a team. Obviously, a sport, extracurricular activities, class projects, you know, the ability to work with other people and get along with other people is so important. And, you know, particularly with this field where, you know, if you're teaching other people's kids. And if you're a principal, you've got all these folks, and I had 108 staff members in my building, you know, and how do you work with everyone with their unique personalities and their wants and their needs and their own personal history, which can be very interesting, and get everyone on the same page and move forward. So I would say those two things: any opportunity to speak to people in a public setting, and then also chances to work with others, you know, moving a goal forward, are probably two of the most important areas.
And so in New York State, in order to be a teacher, you have to have certification and then eventually a master's degree.
That is true.
To be an administrator, is there an additional degree required with that?
There is. It's not a degree per se. It's called a Certificate of Advanced Studies. So it's the equivalent of another master's program that you can do. Typically, you need to have at least 3 years experience in teaching before you can start that. I know that SUNY Cortland has a very good program. Binghamton University has a very good program. And I think there's even some online options as well. And so that typically involves a series of classes and things like educational law, curriculum development, assessment. And then there's an internship that goes along with the administrative degree as well, where districts will place you in, you know, you're going to be an assistant principal for half the day and teach for the other half of the day. And that's usually the capstone type project. So, yeah. Yep.
Great. Do you have any other advice you'd want to share with somebody interested in education or education administration?
Yeah, I mean, I think this moment is really instructive for the impact that educators have. I know even my own kids, you know, when they have the opportunity to either talk to their teacher or see their teacher, it's a blessing for them, and they really look forward to that, and they build connections. And, you know, our kids need good role models. I mean, obviously their parents, guardians, and immediate family is huge, but, you know, beyond that, they need to know that there's good role models out there in our schools as well. And so, you know, the impact that I think we're seeing right now is just even more of a reason why this is a very valuable profession. And I hope that people do pursue it.
Great. Well, thanks so much for giving us advice today. And if anybody has any further questions, right after this video will be my contact information, and you can shoot me an email and we can get those questions answered for you. Thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate it.